Kris Graves. It's my pleasure to introduce Kris Graves this evening. Kris Graves is an artist and publisher based in New York and London. He received his BFA in visual arts from SUNY Purchase College and has been published and exhibited globally, including the National Portrait Gallery in London, England, and Aperture Gallery, New York, among others. Permanent collections include the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Schomburg Center, Whitney Museum, Guggenheim Museum, Museum of Fine Arts, Houston, Brooklyn Museum, and the Wedge Collection, Toronto, amongst others. It's our pleasure to have you here with us this evening, Kris. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, y'all. It's fun to be doing these this Zoom lecture. Thanks for wanting to talk to me, I guess. I mean, I've never spoken to Tufts or SMFA,
SMFA. That's a tongue tie.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. And sadly, we can't do this kind of thing in person. Always unfortunate, but yeah, what can you do? We're in the middle of a crazy, never-ending year. So if everybody can see my screen, I can just start yapping about this stuff. So yeah. Me as a baby, or a child, I should say. My name is Kris Graves, and I graduated from high school in the year 2000. And before that, I mean, I was interested in photography probably around the 10th grade when my parents let me be interested. How do I say this? Like, I was not good at anything else in high school, so art was the only thing that I thought I could do. So I focused on that. And then I realized that maybe the only art form that could make you money was photography. So I narrowed in and tried to, luckily my school had a darkroom and a great professor. So I was able to just practice with the school's equipment for a year until my parents got me an overpriced camera from down the street from my house. This is all happening in Long Island, Westbury, Long Island. I'm from Queens, but I grew up high school wise in Long Island. And just experimenting in the darkroom, learning the process. And then I went to Purchase College, which is a state school just outside of New York City, and started to learn about some of the greats like photojournalists or just photographers from before my time. One being Gordon Parks. I think he was one of my, definitely the first influence of mine. And also Eugene Smith, W. Eugene Smith, who was a great, a huge influence photojournalist from the 20th century. Later in college, I started to get interested in like urban land and architecture. So I started to love the works of George Tice, who was photographing in Jersey and New York City, or just around the tri-state area, photographing the most boring landscapes ever. The most lovely, boring landscapes. And I was also loved Hiroshi Sugimoto's work, who is way more conceptual than the others, but these pictures are not so different from each other, I guess. And then there's like, when I was starting to get out of college in 2004, I remember going to the MoMA and seeing this enormous Andrei Gursky print there. I mean, maybe this one was there, but there was a bunch of them. They're all like 100 inches. It's the first time I ever saw a photograph that size, and I was super interested by it. Yeah, and in Purchase, I just started to, practice. I wasn't allowed to take a photography class the first year because there's these like core classes. I don't know if you guys have those same core requirements, but Purchase, you're not allowed to take a photo class until the second year of college, and I was not trying to have that. So by the second semester, I took photojournalism classes just because they weren't part of the major and I could sneak into them. And just started to practice photography in the studio. My parents paid for college because I went to a state school and not one of the private schools that I applied for. So that was nice, but I also then had to pay for my own everything else. So like I paid for, like my food and everything else, and like clothing and everything. So I realized that I needed to make more money. So I got into doing a bunch of freelance work pretty early on in college, photographing headshots for, I don't know if anybody knows Purchase College, but Purchase is a conservatory school. So there's like a dance conservatory. So I photographed for money here. I don't know if I actually made any money doing these photographs because I was in the darkroom spending all my money on film and all the equipment. So I think I probably lost money on all these jobs, but it felt like I was making. Anyway, so there was also a theater school there. So I was photographing actors, musicians, and my roommate was he was a playwright, so all of his plays and performances were photographed also. When I got out of school,
You just got muted, Kris. I don't know what happened. You're on mute.
Let me see. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
host.
Sorry.
Stop muting me, host.
I'm sorry. Go on.
I don't know where I was muted, but I'm just going to go on with Queen's work. So in 2004, I started to photograph the development of the western part of Queens, which touches or abuts New York City, Manhattan. And I was pretty much walking around, biking around, making photographs of scenes that I thought would be gone very soon. I mean, luckily I was right. I mean, not luckily, there's too much glass around here now, but back then it looked good. It was like kind of empty. There was nobody on the streets. It was like a beautiful, beautiful scenes, but then it turned into just like condos and gentrification pretty much. So I've been photographing that for my whole career, but these are some of the early works from that, back when I actually used the film camera and had time to like go to darkrooms and stuff. Yeah, so this is all like 2000s and some of the teens. And along with the Queen's work, which is one of the first things I started to do, like you can see the change in years like totally apparent here. You can see like when something is old and then when something is brand new. I mean, now there's a building actually, you can't even take this picture anymore because there's a building right there. And then behind that clock tower, there's an 80-story tower. That clock tower was the tallest building in Long Island City for a long time. And now it is very much the shortest. Yeah, so Queens. Bunch of nasty Queens photographs in my George Tice style. When I got out of school, I also wanted to keep my friend group together. So I started this website. I don't know if anybody used Adobe Flash. No, Macromedia Flash, a terrible website builder back in like 15 years ago. But I learned how to make these very rudimentary websites. And I made this gallery website, which always held 30 photographers at a time and had a small portfolio of 30 photographers, trying to keep people involved in the arts and like having their stuff available for viewing online, because back then no one had a website. I mean, this year, nobody had their own website. So I wanted a kind of a gallery website online. This was like 2006, 7. And yeah, we were successful in, well, we had the people online, and then we moved into like actual group shows where I started to become more of a real life curator. So I rented out these gallery spaces in Chelsea, Arts District in New York for about a year. I rented about 7 or 8 times this same space. They kept renting it to me because I guess they wanted the money. And I went into so much debt having these shows, but I built this kind of awesome group of followers and supporters, even though I really did not make money on these shows. That stayed with me to now. I mean, I have friends that I met during this time period in like 2007 that are some of my closest friends now. So I really appreciate, like, I'm just pushing through. As far as this lecture goes, it's not like, it is a chronology. So we are going from time to time, but I don't see it like that. It all kind of mixes together into this like kind of circle of time, really. I mean, I'm in contact with most of the people that I'm showing you, and you know, time is weird. So the same year I wanted to get good with a view camera. I was using a view camera in college, but I was never good at portraiture. And I still probably am not so good at portraiture, but I'm trying. And the first time I started to try making portraits, it was for a series named Extended Family. And pretty much I just had every person that I knew that was a friend or family member come to my like bedroom in Astoria, or I would take the camera out to my parents' house in Long Island and photograph everybody I knew with the 4.5 view camera for over the course of one winter, because it was freezing cold. I was usually outside making photographs, but for the winter, I didn't want to be outside, so I had to find myself a new project. So I just made my bedroom into a photo studio, my bathroom into a film darkroom, or a processing developing darkroom, and yeah, did these portraits just to kind of figure out how to use the view camera. I bought some Alien B lights, like some cheap strobes, which I still have those same strobes. I mean, they still work 20 years later. It's kind of amazing, actually. Not 20 years, but a long time. Actually, now it's like 20. Oh, God. College was a long time ago now. It's really unfortunate. Yeah, so I started to practice in that way in 2006-07. In February of 2007, I started, I was working for an art studio in Chelsea, where the art studio photographed collection artwork for museums and gallerists and anyone who needed their art photographed. And I wasn't actually a photographer for that job. I was just a digital tech, but I saw that there was a photography job opened at the Guggenheim Museum, and an ex of mine was like, you should apply. She was an ex then too. She was like, you should apply for this this job. It's better than the job you have. You get paid like, I was getting paid $12.50 an hour in 2007. And I was just like, well, I don't want to apply for this because I don't want to like do this type of work for a living. But then I was like, actually they have medical, so I have to apply for this. And yeah, so I applied, got the job, and started photographing the collection for the Guggenheim Museum for 11 years. I mean, I was there from 2007 till 2018, and have recently gone freelance. I do the same thing for work now, actually photographing artwork. But over the course of that time, I was able to photograph I was responsible for photographing more than just the artwork as soon as I got the job, because that's just how jobs work. I think there's no job descriptions are pretty funny because you never stick to it. I don't know anyone who's ever stuck to their job description. So I was responsible for photographing like the artist. This guy's name is Maurizio Catalan. He's the guy who put the taped banana on the wall last year or 2 years ago in Basel. And he also made this solid gold toilet that they put in the museum. Yeah, so photographed him a few times. This is him with his this Pinocchio figure lays face down in a pool of water at the museum. So it's pretty funny. It's also like the curate. Anyway, I was responsible for conservation photography, making portraits of staff, installations of the shows, all of the putting together of the artworks in the back end. Like in my studio, the art handlers would put together the works that they'd never put together before, so to figure out how they would do it at the museum. I was there late nights photographing special events. Like there was this script, you would put your signature. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about Guggenheim stuff. Anyway, so I was photographing a lot of the Guggenheim events. This bird, not stupid. It's not a stupid bird. It was just like some things just felt like really kind of weird to have in a museum, like this bird. I also photographed conservation issues. And this became like a Subway ad. It was a random experience working there because you never knew what you were going to get into every day. It was pretty random. I mean, there's people in these cars installing these lights. I think it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they're like just climbing into these cars like art handlers. It's pretty incredible, actually. Yeah, they turned off all the lights in the museum and gave everybody headlamps for this show for an artist that I hate and I won't mention. They have this, they made some artists for a Hugo Boss Prize put $100,000 bills on the wall of a gallery. It's a huge gallery, and no one stole any money, which was amazing. And at the same time, I started to, the economy crashed, I think in 2008. My cousin quit his job as a banker and wanted to do banking freelance, which sounds ridiculous, but he was able to make it work. He wanted an office space in Brooklyn because he lives right down the street from Dumbo, Brooklyn, where we ended up having this gallery space named Kris Graves Projects. So we ran this space, me and him. He ran his company out of the back of that wall, and I ran the gallery space. He actually ended up running most of it, and I was just like a kind of artist liaison or something. But so we were able to, over the course of 2.5 years, have about 25 solo shows for, artists I love. Photographers and works on paper is what we focused on for those years. And I started to realize really quickly that it was a huge pain in the ass to try to sell prints to people because my friends couldn't afford them. The rich people weren't coming to Brooklyn to buy the work. And I was not trying to be on the phone with collectors trying to get them to buy people's artwork. That was just not part of what I wanted to do. Plus I was doing this all on weekends and nights when I had a full-time day job at the same time. So there was a lot of stuff going on. Bonnie, I am actually seeing those chairs in your background now. It's pretty funny, actually. We have the same chairs. At the same time, you'll see that I'm just kind of overlapping a lot of things here because that's just how I work and operate. At the same time, I was working with a friend of mine named Sergio Fernandez who wanted to make a book of Laura McPhee's work. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Laura McPhee. She works at Massachusetts College of Art, kind of down the street from you. And she made this beautiful series of work named Guardians of Solitude. We wanted to make a book that was the same size as her smaller exhibition prints, 16 by 20. So she was open for that, and we made this very, very expensive book. I'm so glad that I didn't have to pay for it. I still store some of them in my studio. Yeah, expensive. But I kind of realized that making books was where I wanted to live instead of the gallery world, because they were easier to get to people's homes. If you wanted it, you could probably afford to buy a $40 product versus a $2,000 print. And it just felt like a better way to like be a part of the art world in a more like economic or demographic, or I don't know what the word is, but like reach the people. You can't reach the people with $5,000 prints. So books were what we wanted to do. So we did the gallery for a bit, and I got kind of, I was also not sleeping very much because I lived an hour away from the gallery and I was there when I wasn't at work. So it was a lot actually. I look back and I was like, this is kind of crazy. I definitely did not do anything besides just immerse myself in artwork for this whole time, and probably still do that. Now it's just on the computer instead of like in person, which is pluses and minuses, I guess. If you want, I have this is my cousin Gravel, who I started the gallery with, and this is how I used to dress. If you have any questions, please like write them down or just remember them, and I'll answer anything you have questions about. Yeah, so at the end of having the gallery, the next year I decided to make a book named Permanence, which was a series of about 66 or 67 photographs taken over the course of the 10 years prior. I was doing a lot of traveling because I worked at the Guggenheim and had a lot of vacation time, even though they didn't pay well. So I was able to like go away on $400, $500 flights to anywhere in the world and just stay with friends and walk around where my friends lived while they were at work or whatever. So that was awesome. I mean, it was like being totally free, like going to Japan and visiting people, or like England. And I wanted to make this book of that work. I mean, this is kind of like, I'm speeding through this stuff because there's a lot to cover. And but this was my first book project, and I did it all in a Kickstarter campaign where I tried to raise, I think, $16,000. And I didn't realize that there was going to be all these fees, kind of. So I didn't make enough, even though I made enough. So I still had to come out of pocket thousands of dollars to make the book. It was like be careful what you get yourself into and how much money you think you need for something is all I'll say. But the book came out really well, and it was $40, really cheap or inexpensive for a hardcover book. And I like that. I love that. Like being able to give something for just a little bit less than everyone else was great for me. The next year, they messed up something on the first book. The press in Iceland messed up, and I had been on press for the first book, and they did something weird. So they gave me a deal on the second book, which made it like 40% less expensive than it would have been. So I sped up the second book, and it was about Iceland. So this series is named Discovered Missing, and the project was based on this ring road in Iceland that I think is about 1,400 kilometers diameter, like 1,400 kilometers around the main island. And I wanted to make a series. I was seeing a lot of Iceland work that was like, oh, it's so beautiful from its mountaintop, or from the sky, or somewhere that was inaccessible for most people. Like, I mean, I'm a city person, so I couldn't go to those places that I saw in the pictures. So I wanted to make a road trip journal kind of Iceland. So staying within a mile of the road and making our photographs as we went on the road. So that's what I did. I circled the island, I think 3 times for this project, and once after. My real thing was just seeing Northern Lights. I mean, you can kind of see the haze of Northern Lights in the sky here, but I was kind of there to see Northern Lights, and everything else was a bonus. I mean, making these photographs, every 20 minutes you stop in Iceland, you're in a different landscape. I suggest it as a vacation destination after COVID. It's perfect. There's nobody around. You probably won't have to wear a mask very much. And And yeah, beautiful. I mean, all of these things are within like 3 hours from each other, kind of. So it's a beautiful, beautiful place to visit. And yeah, so we made that book in 2013. Same deal, another Kickstarter. This time I knew how much I needed, so I didn't actually lose money on it. But I think it was that was the start of crowdsourcing, I guess. And now we just do that. We kind of take it in-house to our website and make pre-orders that way to sell all the books we sell. And I'll get into that stuff in a minute also. I used to, for shows, I'm always trying to trick the system just a little bit because there's no real money for us to be showing, right? Like as photographers, it seems like really difficult for me to get a show where somebody else pays for shit. It's really difficult. So for me, this Iceland show is happening in a very small gallery. I mean, you can see, this is as far back as I can get from this wall on the left side. And this wall, that print on the left side of the wall is 40 by 80 inches. And the only reason I was able to make these like 40 by 80 inch prints was because I pre-sold this show at cost to a bunch of friends or like people that I knew had more money than I did. And I was like, yo, would you like to buy a humongous piece for like $700 after this show is up? Because I just need to be able to produce it. And they were like, yeah, fine. I haven't seen these pictures since, but I'm so glad that people took those huge ass prints off my hands. I mean, I don't know what I would do with those things now. They're enormous. Can you imagine having like a 40 by 80 inch? I can't. Anyway, right after that Iceland work, I started to kind of think a little bit more inward on a project named Testament, where I wanted to photograph Black people in a kind of different light. I realized that like for the history of like mankind, pretty much, people of color have been demonized in photography. I mean, really, there's a lot of rich celebrity images of Black people over the course of the last maybe 60 years. But if it wasn't like rich Black people, it was always people that were criminals or poor, destitute, bums. Like this is what we see in the like lexicon of Black people in the artwork. So I wanted to kind of change that a little bit. And at this time, it didn't seem like many people were making this type of work where we were just photographing Black people in positivity. This is 2014. 2020, however, like those 7 years changed a lot. You see a lot of Black portraiture out in the world in a way that you didn't see in 7 years ago. I didn't see any. So that was a huge change, actually. And it does have a lot to do with like the George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movements of last year. But this is when Black Lives Matter kind of started and there was still not so much going on. What I wanted to do with these portraits is I wanted to surround people with color. As you see, I have these color changing light bulbs in the house. This was a long time ago, so these lights are a lot different than the ones I'm using now, but I wanted to surround people with, specifically Black men in this case, in 2015. I surround people with 4 color-changing LED light bulbs. I give them an app, and they can choose the color combination as I sit for them. So I'm sitting for people, and they're choosing their color combination, and then we're switching places and I'm photographing them with the color that they chose for themselves. Besides that, this visual part of the project, it was also, I got a lot of writing from these guys, and I have this whole video series on like YouTube and my website where you can see all this kind of stories about like discrimination, but not like the cops beat me up. It's more like this teacher had me and another light-skinned Black kid come to the front of the science class and say, I love how you bring a diversity to the science. That kind of racism is what we're trying to talk about in this series. So it has been successful. We're still showing it. I have a show up at a school named Ursinus College. I hope that's pronounced correctly. I should know how to pronounce the school that I'm having a show at, but that opens like now near Philly. And I have it 2 other times this year, later in the year, showing. But it's been pretty cool because I'm able to like put 80 of these 16 by 20 inch photographs in a grid on a wall. I guess you'll see that in a minute, actually. I've also been making my own books forever. Until this point, I've never had any publisher come to me and ask to make a book of mine, so I keep doing it myself. So I made a book for that series and then got it co-published by a gallery named Blue Sky because I was having a show there. So I was like, do you want to put your name in this book? It'll be a cosign pretty much for me. And I still paid for the whole thing. So it was like kind of a win-win for them. And a win-win for me because I was going to make it anyway. So we made this first edition of Testament Project for Men. And the next year, same year, my wife came to me and said, you're only going to shoot men for this project. I mean, that's not enough. And so I went back into the studio and started to photograph women. But the only difference in the women's, well, first off, there's a few differences. This is actually my sister, by the way, and one of my sisters. The only difference with the women's portraits are I changed the backdrop from black or dark gray to light gray, and the lights got better. So like within that year of technology, the actual lighting systems got brighter and better. So I was able to actually like do something a little bit different in the studio. The first time I was shooting everything at like an eighth of a second, and I was hoping that things were sharp. And then by this moment, digital cameras got better. The black point in digital got better. The lights got better and brighter. And I was able to like get real times, like 30th of a second, 60th of a second on these shots, and still be able to blow them up to like 40 by 50, 50 by 60 inches. That's kind of the big size for these prints. Same process though, sitting for people, they're choosing colors, and then we're switching places. Most of the women actually had friends with them. Well, not most, but half and half had people with them so that the other women would sit for them because they were friends, and that would be even more interesting. And instead of, we got stories from these women to write into the second book, which is now, both of them are sold out. I mean, I don't make so many copies of anything when I do them, and it's been years, so they're gone. But at some point, hopefully somebody reprints them. So we did that work in 2016, and then I started to show the work pretty consistently. Consistent for me is like having 1 or 2 shows a year. I don't really show that much. People don't ask, so it doesn't really happen so much. But yeah, so this is the first show in Portland in Blue Sky Gallery. If you know Portland, you know that it's like 3% black population or something really low. And I just wanted to fill up the entire huge, like 1,000 square foot gallery with a bunch of black faces. And if I had more money, I would have just went up to the ceiling with these photographs, but like they give you like a very small stipend to make these shows happen. And now, actually, I'm on the board of Blue Sky Gallery because I talked so much crap about the gallery when I was out there that they wanted me to be on their board. So we actually pay people more money now. That's anyway. So we had the show at I showed this piece a bunch. This was the first time I got to show a video piece along with it, which was this 20-minute video of men telling those stories that I just spoke about in this person's downstairs like basement gallery named Norte Mar in Brooklyn. Or Queens, I forget, it's on the border. I also got to show it at Bryn Mawr College, so I am Philly popular for some reason. People in Philadelphia love this stuff. Bryn Mawr College is an all-women's school, and I love and on the left side you see one portrait that is not one that I made, and this is the person that started Bryn Mawr College, and she didn't allow black people in her school. So that's why I wanted to like have all these black people in the space as well, because they were, at some point not allowed to even be in the room. So yeah, we had it at an art fair, and then this is the first time I did a grid of this work, I think, possibly, or maybe the second time I did this grid, and those started to become really popular with the grids themselves. So got to show that. This is at Mass Art, actually, or what is now called MAAM, which is the museum, I guess. I had this show out where I got this enormous gallery. So this show was at our University of Arizona Tucson campus. I pretty much emailed the curator, Brooke. I didn't know her. I emailed her at like 1 a.m. New York time with one image, and I'd love to show my work at your space. And she emailed me back the next day saying, yeah, I love your work. Let's try to find some space for you in the schedule. And within 6 months, I was flying to Tucson to like have this show. So sometimes you should cold call email people because it sometimes works. I mean, I sent 4 emails that night. 2 people got back to me. One person said no thanks, and she said yes. So it was a good night of emailing. That's Brooke, actually. I haven't spoken to her since, but she was really nice, and I would say, like, if she's still there, try to get a show at University of Arizona. But for me, it was more like I wanted to have a show in a huge space, because in New York City, all the spaces are pretty small to show in, especially for us photographers. There's not that many humongous photo galleries in New York. So I had this opportunity to just like have a video piece of women and a bunch of work on the wall. And the only way I could actually afford it, and I realize now it's, I don't know if you got, these 16 by 20 inch prints are taped directly to the wall, and they're just taped. So at the end, like, so I'd print them on this printer at home, and then they're printed on Epson, and I call it enchanted matte paper. It's enhanced matte, very simple Epson paper. but the good thing about that paper, which is different than almost any other paper, is it has no glare. You can point lights directly at it and it will not glare. So for flat pieces on a wall that look like wallpaper, the glare is crazy when you're seeing things 8 feet up on the wall. So I had to figure out a paper that made sense for these big installations. And the paper was great because it has a great black point, great contrast, and was totally flat. At the end of each show, I have the gallerist rip all of these prints into a pile, take a picture of the pile, and throw the pile in the garbage, because I don't use them twice. They're just like for like one-time use, these grids. Anyhow, so that kind of move, this is where we start to I start to get more jobs in photography. I mean, I was at the Guggenheim for so long, and I was always taking some freelance positions. But at this point, I was still at the Guggenheim, and now people were actually asking me to really do true freelance work, where I was mixing the job and the freelance was getting a little bit difficult. So I just had to quit the job because I, one, hated it. I was there too long. They didn't pay well. They were never going to. And as soon as I left the Guggenheim, I made double the first year. I mean, not even trying. I didn't look for jobs. They just came to me in a way because, it's just, I don't know. I got lucky, I guess. So the first job I got, one of the first jobs I did was this, actually that's a lie. This job is from 2018 and it's called We Built This, and it was for Huffington Post, where I was photographing these kind of celebrities that also did, that are also doing, kind of running their own nonprofits on the side and stuff like that. So there was a mix between the popular and the stuff they do in behind the scenes. I'm also still making photographs in this kind of testament project way. So these are a few of those photographs from a few, last year and years past. I also have been doing a lot of architecture jobs. The first architecture job I've done is called Bronx Contours. And it pretty much takes you on a trip throughout the Bronx. And the Bronx differs from most of the other boroughs because Queens, Brooklyn, and most of Manhattan were flattened. They the glacial erratics and all of the mountains were kind of flattened to make a gridded street system, but they didn't do that to the Bronx. Because it came a little bit later in the city's development, and it's the Bronx is probably one of the boroughs that doesn't have money, so the people are poorer than everywhere else in the city. So I went up to photograph what that difference looks like in the streets. What does it look like? How is it different than Manhattan? You can walk in Manhattan for 5 miles on a flat street, but in the Bronx, it's not possible. And we were photographing all these streets that were just staircases. From the bottom of these stairs, it's these are actually the stairs that the Joker's on, running away from cops and stuff. So it's pretty funny that I was just photographing this a few years before that movie. But I was also personally invested in this project because my family's from the Bronx. So I was pretty much walking in between people's homes that I knew growing up while I was making this series. So to make it worth it, I mean, I think I got $500 to do this job, and I didn't want to take more than one day to do it. So luckily one Saturday morning, it was super gray, and I walked for 24 miles just with a pair of new Nikes and dogged them out in a day, walking from the Yankee Stadium all the way to Riverdale or Riverside, whatever it's called, on the west side. And that was my day, making this work for one full day. There's so many other photographs. I mean, I made a lot of work that day. It's hard to kind of go through little pieces, but I'll try. Jobs like that led me to doing this is being recorded. I don't know where it's being recorded, but hopefully the storage or the CubeSmart people never hear me talk about their stuff. But these crazy, ugly architectural buildings that exist in all the major cities in America that are filled with color and no windows, they seem to like this. And I seem to think that these are some of the eyesores of modern architecture. But I can photograph them. So I was commissioned many times. I work with them a lot to photograph all of the new CubeSmarts that come out in New York City. It's the craziest, what kind of job is that? Anyway, so do that. I worked with the Architectural League again from that Bronx job to photograph every police precinct in New York City. So they found me a little bit more money, and I was still working at the Guggenheim for all these jobs actually. So it was May 2017 or something. We fought about this job for, I think, a year because I was like, I'm not trying to make photographs in police precincts without, one, funding, two, a note from the police headquarters saying that it's okay for me to be outside with a huge tripod photographing a police precinct. So getting all those things in line and in order took some time, and then they found me the money, and I went out for 5 straight weekends over the course of a full month to make the photographs of 77? Yeah, 77 police precincts, all of them. I photographed every police precinct in all of New York City's boroughs. I don't drive, so this was pretty much me like hiring assistants to drive me around or walk me around. I mean, it was pretty funny because I would actually I would say like, for the assistants, they had to go into the police station and tell them that I was outside. And by the time they were done dealing with that, I was almost done making the photographs. So it was like a good mix of things. Most of the police were nice. I mean, some people didn't want us to be there, but most people were like, oh, can we move cars for you? Or like that kind of stuff, which was cool. I appreciated that. But I will never do a project like this again. So after that work, I did a project with Vanity Fair named A Bleak Reality. I mean, I call it that. They called it whatever. But for me, it was called A Bleak Reality. And I photographed the locations where 8 Black men were killed by police officers across America. And in the same style as what I'm showing you before, like those like George Tice images hit me, and I'm still trying to make like work beautiful like that. So I went out to make the most boring landscapes you could of these 8 scenes where Black people were killed by police officers. They're not boring, but like they're loaded is what I'll call them, but they're pretty serene scenes. And I wanted to make it so that you'd see these scenes and be like, oh, I've been to a place like that. That's not a dangerous location. They're just locations. This is like happening everywhere. And I wanted to show that in these portraits, or I guess they're not portraits, but to me, they're kind of portraits. And I ended up making my own book of this work because I wanted to. And again, I don't wait for people to want to work with me. So what I wanted to do is make it a big book, but I wanted to make it cheap because the last time I made a big book, that like Laura McPhee book probably cost somebody 60 grand. It wasn't me. But for this book, I wanted it to, I don't have any next to me. It's so sad. Anyway. Oh, actually. I think this is a proof. So it's not the right, plus the color is not going to be right away, but it's this size, right? I wanted to make a book that was 20 by 24 inches. So, you know, that's, so that's the deal. Yeah, and and this book, you know, that book there is staple bound, digitally offset, printing press in Jersey, and it probably cost me $10 or $12 a copy to make it. So much cheaper than that one that costs about, I would say, over $100 to make each copy of. And I can afford to sell them for cheaper. So I can sell them for $20, $28, and that's really what I wanted to do in the first place. More shows. This is at the Petty School, which is near Princeton. It's a boarding school, pretty much. It's a high school boarding school, and I was able to show there last year or 2 years ago. Last year is like kind of a wash, right? I guess I didn't do anything last year, so 2 years ago is when I was able to like actually have shows. For this show is the first time I actually was able to put the Bleak Reality work in the same space as the Testament work. And what I wanted to do is just not light that whole wall. So at night when you walk into the space, and it was a winter show, so after 4 p.m. you'd walk into the space and the murder scenes would be in almost darkness compared to the very vibrant wall opposite it. And low to the ground. So I actually hung on my thing. These are all 30-40s. They look tiny in this picture, but I'm usually printing around 30-40, and these are like 2 feet above the ground. So below your eye level to like see these murder scenes. That job led to me working with Google in conjunction with an organization named the Equal Justice Initiative, who was working on a huge project named Lynching in America, where they did extensive decades of research about the lynchings that happened in the South during the Jim Crow era. And I think they found about 4,500 lynchings that occurred and all the information about them. And they had me go down to Ellisville, Mississippi, near New Orleans, near enough to New Orleans, to photograph a location where a man in 1919 was murdered or pretty much lynched on this tree. And the story behind it is super painful, but but yeah, so I went down there to photograph the town a little bit. And then I flew to Los Angeles to photograph his descendants. His niece, Mamie Kirkland, who was also from Mississippi. And she pretty much, we spoke, she was 108 in this photograph. She just died last year, but it was really cool to hang out with like a 108-year-old who was still like totally talking, like walking around, having like a good time, like smiling, and just like, she was like, yeah, I come out to LA to visit my son for sometimes in winter because Buffalo's too cold. Because she ended up going from like Mississippi, and she stopped in like St. Louis and was kicked out from racism, and she stopped in Ohio and was kicked out. So she kept moving her way, doing this, the Trail of Tears pretty much, until she landed in Buffalo, which was a safe haven for a lot of slavery because it was so close to Canada, and they had a lot of anyway. So yeah, having that conversation with her as well as getting photographs of her and her son. Tarabu in LA was it was a cool moment. I was so happy to do this kind of work, and this stuff ended up being a video. Like these portraits went into this 5-minute video where they actually explain in depth this story a bit more. And now this is all kind of like the freelance work section of my my lecture, but I was working with Maya Lin at the Hudson River Museum, and it was in conjunction with Pace Gallery, who I work with now in the city a bit, and I was actually just photographing her work. I mean, this is what I look like in summertime when I'm photographing artwork, like business on top and definitely not on bottom. So I was photographing Maya Lin's work. She's incredible, and I only met her the once, but they made a book of it. I didn't know they were going to make a book. I was just making the photographs over the course of like 3 or 4 weeks going up there. But they made this cool little book and sent me some copies, and I was super surprised by it. I mean, it was really cool of not having to have made that book myself was awesome. To be filled with my artwork too was random and pretty cool. So they did a good job with that. And publishing, on the publishing end, I started the publishing company seriously after those first 2 books I made for myself. I started in 2015 publishing other people's work. So as of today, we have I think we've made about 95 books in the last 6 or 7 years. We meaning me and each of these individual artists and some designers. So, some of the books, for the most part, we have 2 presses running. One is Kris Graves Projects, which deals with contemporary photography in all cases. I mean, there's no, I love showing people of color, of course. I deal a lot with queer artists. I mean, I work with queer artists a lot. People of color for the most part, and the mix of those 2 things. And I also run a new publishing company named Monolith, which is devoted strictly to people of color in all artistic disciplines. So not only photography, but most of these are just going to be works from Kris Graves Projects. This is a book by Ruben Natal San Miguel named Harlem. Ruben's been living in Harlem for I think 3 or 4 decades, and he's just been walking the streets making photographs. So we were able to make this book last year. Or 2 years ago. 2 years ago. Everything's 2 years ago. We worked with a woman named Raina Young on a book named The Rugs Topography. And I think, I do have some pictures. Look at that. This book goes through a year-long breakup of her and her boyfriend because, well, he wanted to transition into becoming a woman. So she photographed that year of their breakup. And we made this awesome book. I mean, she's so good. Raina's so good. She teaches in Arkansas now with a dude named Zora Murph, who I also made a book with that I think I'm going to show you right now, actually. So we've made a bunch of books, and I wanted to have something of a staple, like something that I can come back to every year as a series of books. So I was, before I left the Guggenheim, I was thinking about like feeling crazy lost in the staff meeting I was having. Like, it just felt so crappy to be there. And I love my people at the Guggenheim, but that moment was like not a good moment. And it was about a month after I got married, and I came home and said like, I gotta quit. And my wife was like, yeah, of course, you got to do what you got to do. And she was very supportive. And I thought of this idea named Lost. So I made this set of 10 books with 10 photographers, people that were interested. I mean, I emailed people that night and said, would you like to be in this book? It's like 10 photographers photographing 10 cities around the world, places that they were familiar with, they were from, or had visited a lot. So We worked with a dude named Zora J. Murph on his Omaha series, which has now been picked up multiple times by other publishers. We worked with a person named Jody Porwell, who was named Joseph Traina when we made this book together. And I always keep it Purchase College like specific because I'm a Purchase College like fan, and every year we make books with people from Purchase. So that's a staple in my world. This is a book by a dude named Luke Abiol who photographed San Francisco. I did my own book because I'm selfish. And the next year, which was 2019, we made this 20 box set, which I would say like, don't make 20 books at once. It's too much artist relations, but we did it, and it was really great. These 20 books came out really beautifully, and it was called Lost 2, and it was 20 photographers photographing not only cities this time, it was 20 places around the world. So there was like small places like Viterbo, Colombia by Cristina Velasquez, Tijuana by Griselda San Martin. There's just a bunch of different projects happening here. I believe that for the most part, when I sell out of a book, if I remember to, I put the full book online for view on my website. So you can see like every page from all of these books on the website, because most of them are sold out now. There's only about 5 or 6 of these books left. And yeah, we had a good time making those. We made a book last year named On Death in collaboration with Humble Arts Foundation. It was a nonprofit, I guess based in Seattle now. And it was pretty much it was open call, which I do every year, an open call. This open call was show us your idea of death in one photograph. So this was a group of 45 artists. I think Cheryl St. Ungus from in Boston, actually. I don't know if she went to your school. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So we, Jed, this is a professor of ours named Jed Devine from Purchase, who I had to get him in the book. I had him apply. He didn't want to do it, but I needed this picture in the book, so I told him to apply. And yeah, so we were able to work with 45 or 46 different artists in this book, and it's turned out really well. I think this book was on like like a Time best of the year list or something. I mean, I don't really care about awards or anything like that, so it's up to the artists usually to look for awards, because I don't care. I don't care what people think about the books. I know that they're good, so that's all that really matters to me. This book was named Wig Heavier Than a Boot. We made this 2 years ago also by David Johnson and Philip Matthews. I always get it confused. I always want to say Dave Matthews and Philip Johnson, but that is not who they are. So it's pretty much a photographer and a poet duo. The poet also is the model for the photographs. So the poet has an alter ego, and one of his names he's Philip, and then Petal is his alter ego. I don't know if I have any pictures of when Petal writes, but Petal writes in script and Philip writes in text. So that changes over as you go through this book. Pretty beautiful, super beautiful book. We were able to, it turned out really well. We also do a series of books with a friend of mine named Greg Evans, also from Purchase College, and works at FIT now. And every other year, I think we are pretty much averaging every other year we make a Setting Sun volume, whatever. So we're up to volume 4 now. Hopefully next year we make a volume 5, or maybe I don't know, something like that. So we work with him over and over again as he kind of shows us a landscape of loss, is the best way I can describe it. But he's getting much better at these books. I mean, the first one was like a staple bound little guy. They're all the same physical size, but like he just adds pages, add pages as the years go on, because there's so much content. He just shoots a lot, and they're all just weird and gross and beautiful. We made a book with a friend named Isaac Diggs, and this was called Middle Distance, or the Anxiety of Influence. How long have I been talking, and how long do you want this to be?
I feel like we probably should wrap it up in 2 minutes so we can have
2 minutes. Okay. All right, Isaac Diggs, and then I made a third Lost set named Lost 3. So original, where the person who won the open call for this Lost set was Alina Van Ryzen, who went to Bryn Mawr College and shows us her adventures through her like time at Bryn Mawr. And it's funny because everything is like a full circle, like me having the show there, finding this artwork that I didn't even choose. This was chosen by Leslie from Aperture, the the publications director at Aperture, was our juror for this show, or for these books. We also were able to work with Keely Yuyan, who we will work with again very soon, coming soon. He's a photographer that focuses specifically on the Arctic Circle and the people that live within it. And he's a National Geographic photographer. He's he's blowing up. We worked with Nadia Nakorda, and this is a first book that was actually not space-based or place-based in our set. So we're going to start doing this a little bit more, where we see people growing up in different parts of America. And then Jed's book, which is New York in the 70s and 80s, downtown Manhattan, when nobody was on the streets at all. I mean, just like an empty city. We made a book with a dude named Laurent Chevalier last year named Enough, which is showing us like the black neighborhoods in New York City and how he sees the black experience. And it's also written by an amazing poet named Jamila Lyscott, Dr. Jamila Lyscott. And yeah, we have this one picture of Rochelle Mosman Solano's book here named Colonial Echo. And I'm not going to show you any inside photographs because you should buy the book. Or I will show you a few really quickly, just to embarrass Rochelle.
Thanks.
And yeah, so you can check out some of these on the website as well. We made a book with Hannah Altman named Kavana, which is like you can look through all these things on the website. Remember the South is Frank Francis's book. And this is about his remembrance of growing up in South Carolina. I'm still making work for a new book two new books named Privileged Mediocrity, where, I'm trying to show you the kind of problems that I have with the American landscape, as far as gentrification, discrimination, racism in the landscape, kind of climate change issues, militarization, all these kind of issues. And the people stuck within it. That's what the book is. And besides that project, which will have a book later this year, I also worked with National Geographic last year to photograph twice. I worked with them, and it's pretty much American monuments, or the Confederate monuments of the South more specifically. And that book it'll be like a 2-book set that I make with all these pictures within it. But I went down to Richmond, Virginia to photograph this kind of vibrant summer scenes of protest, where people were just this is actually a Confederate pyramid in Richmond. I don't know if you know this exists, but this exists.
Do you have information about that? This one is incredible, by the way. I've seen this one before. Do you know anything about
what?
This image? I remember seeing this, and you said you spoke to the guy.
This is an image that National Geographic didn't use for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, we were there taking a picture of this Arthur Ashe statue on Monument Avenue in Richmond, and this guy drove up, parked in the middle of the street, left his doors open, and started spray painting White Lives Matter on this Arthur Ashe statue. Arthur Ashe was a tennis superstar, one of the first black tennis superstar in America, and he was a champion. He's one of the best tennis players ever, and he just wrote that. And there's another picture I have. I stayed there for about 20 minutes. He left. 2 women came, cleaned it off. Like, they cleaned off the whole thing in like 4 minutes, and it was impressive. He came back and started to try to clean off like the Black Lives Matter stuff. It was quite a scene.
Oh, sounds like performance. Kris, we have a question, which is from...
Yeah, we can just go to questions now. I'm done. I don't have to talk anymore, but this is pretty much...
No, I mean, maybe... Well, this is... Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about this image and how the Nat Geo thing came to be? For just a moment.
Yeah. Over the summer in June last year, when COVID was thriving in the South, someone from National Geographic named Mallory, one of the photo editors, called me and asked me if I could go down to Richmond to photograph what was happening down there, photographing, because they were tearing these things down. Like, some of these were torn down before I got there the city was taking some down, but mostly it was like crowds of people at all times of day pulling these sculptures down. So I was kind of scared to leave. I was on the Cape Cod for the first 4 months of COVID into this project, and I was like, how am I going to get down there? I do not drive, but I do want this job with National Geographic, so I have to find a friend to drive me and do this whole thing. So Yoav Horesh, who lives in Boston, or now lives north of Boston, he was free. And he was like, yeah, let's do this, man. We hadn't hung out together in a very long time, and we do like each other, and it's cool. Like now I know that I can hang out with him for 7 straight days and not murder each other. You know, that's really important to know. And it was a great trip. It was good to break that COVID vibe. We got a house in Richmond and stayed there for 7 days, and we're able to just make the pictures we wanted to make. I didn't have to kind of listen to the photo editors at all. I was just able to go out and make these landscapes. And you know, I listened a little bit. They wanted a little bit more than I'm comfortable with. Like, I don't want to give, like for jobs, I usually want to give people the pictures that I think are good, not the pictures that they think are good. I mean, so I don't give them the option usually, but the problem with National Geographic is they want your raw files. So you have to give them like almost everything you shoot.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit stranger but it was you know, whatever, they paid, so they get what they want. And the cover was just kind of random. They asked me later in the year, like, would you like if we were able to, would you like to be on the cover of National Geographic? And I was like, of course not. Why would I want that? And then I came to my senses, and it happened. I mean, they put me on the cover. It was awesome. I mean, most of the stuff in this January issue, you know, they could have chosen anything. There were some great photographs in that issue, and they chose mine, and I'm really happy about that. So, yeah.
Okay, that's great. So we have a couple of questions, actually several.
Yep.
The first is, how did you get enough people to sell your books? Did you just naturally garner a big enough audience with your galleries?
Whoa, no, very difficult to sell books. Book cost is fluctuating. I mean, if you're going to make a soft cover 8x10, let's say you're making a soft cover 8x10 inch 64-page book to fit 35 to 40 images within, that's going to cost you probably $4,000. So if you sell 100 copies at $40, you can pay for your book. If you sell 10 copies with a $200 print and you sell an additional 60 copies, that will pay for your book. If I just do the math. I mean, I do the math and I try to see what is the least expensive way to make this project happen. So for me, it's like, I can usually find $3,000 to make something. That's not a lot, and it's not going to pay for everything all the time. But if I can start something with $3,000, I'll put $1,000 in to try to make it. Some books cost a lot more, so it gets a little bit tricky with artists and, you know, figuring out how to work it. But usually we make books that are affordable to buy and to produce. So.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. So
sometimes it's a huge pain in the ass, but you know.
What'd you say? Oh, it's huge.
Sometimes it's a huge pain, and you don't find the money. Like, I mean, I've like worked with people that said they had people, and then, you know, yeah, like I can see like somebody makes 1,000 when they needed to make 5, and then we have to figure out what to do with that. But you know, whatever. I still love the project, so we figure it out. You know.
Yeah. So the next question is. Max says, I really appreciate your candidness about surviving as a photographer. Now that you work consistently in books, do you find yourself changing your process, knowing that the photos you make will eventually be in a sequence? Also, what is the process for finding artists to publish? So
the first question is like, you just have to make the artwork and hopefully you make a good photograph. I think it's very difficult for me to make a good photograph, or a photograph that I think will stand the test of some sort of fake time in my mind or whatever. So I don't know. I'm on the street all the time trying to make photographs. You're seeing 20 pictures out of 3,000. So it's really a small percentage of what you see. So that's the answer to the first question. You have to make photographs individual, and then you can see how they fit into a book. You know, I have really great photographs that I'm trying to find places for, but sometimes they just won't go into the book. They can't. So I don't think about the book until it's time to make the book. And now these days I try to work with a designer so I don't have to think about the book at all. Because I'm not a book designer. I've done it. I've designed 70 or so books, or 80 books out of the ones we've made, but like, I'm still just a photographer, and design is secondary. So it's good to have somebody on my team that actually has sense. The second question?
How do you find the artist to publish?
I'm always looking. On, of course, Instagram is a big one, because Instagram lets you go back in time. So I can see what somebody has done for 2 years and see like, what is their process, even if they don't have that kind of process in their mind. So Instagram is big. People email me all the time. I mean, this has been a low day. I've probably gotten 3 or 4 submissions today. And it's like, I don't even know when I'll be able to respond to everybody, because it's just like, I want to be real with my responses. I don't want to just say like, I'm not interested. I look at all the work and I say like, we can't sell this? Or, I try to give some kind of reasoning and trying not to be too mean at giving those reasons as well. So people are finding me. I was doing a bunch of portfolio reviews and stuff like that around the country very recently. I've been on the road. I've done that 4 or 5 times a year. And that's where you see like 60 or 70 people in a weekend. So usually if you're going to a portfolio review that has 200 artists in it, one person's good enough to publish. So that's the person I publish.
Yeah. Okay. So Karina Ramirez. Hi, Karina. Asks, out of your very diverse set of work, do you have a favorite?
My own artwork?
Yes.
No, definitely not. My favorites would not be pictures that you've seen.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, because the favorite pictures are just that moment where you're like, fuck, that's good. And then you take it, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's trash. But most of the time it's trash. Sometimes it's good, but it doesn't fit anywhere. And that's kind of the best pictures I make.
Well, that's a title for something. So I don't know, maybe it doesn't fit into anything. So Marlene, I don't know if I'm saying your name right, I'm sorry, says, did you envision doing books since you started your photo practice, or was it just something that came up because you wanted the work to reach a wider audience, or was it because you all of a sudden fell into it?
I didn't want to run a gallery anymore, and books were the only way for art to get out there, I thought. So that's why I started making books.
That's interesting.
Simple. Like I thought that it would be more affordable than paying rent on a space and not being able to sell $5,000 pieces of art.
Do you feel that photography is a natural, that books is like a more natural democratic platform for photographs? Since so few photographs are
I mean, democratic is weird now because there's more democratic ways to show photographs now, but books are still the most democratic physical way you can show a book or show photography in a series. Like a print is still cheaper to make than a book, so you could realistically just make boxes of 20 prints, and that would be kind of the same price as making a book with 20 images in it. Kind of, maybe, possibly. Nah, maybe not. Actually, that's a lie. Yeah, books are the cheapest. You can make pretty much an $8 zine that has 80 images in it. Like it's not bad to make books. So yeah, it does democratize it, but I think the internet is going to end up democratizing photography in a way that we can't even predict.
So Siddhant asks, what is your first step to making a photo book? How does that process start for you?
Well, there's 2 different types of photo books I make. One is like my own, which is just a long kind of mess in my mind. So it's not, there's nothing. It's just a mess. But other people's projects are like, most recently, we're going to work with this. We're working with a London-based artist who's doing a series on depression. Like pretty much there are like a lot of self-portraits and a lot of these landscapes that kind of resemble depression. Because, the UK landscape is depressing. So, you can pretty much photograph the hell out of it and it's going to be depressing. I mean, anyway, so with her project, this time I've pretty much looked at all the photographs that she sent me as a PDF, and I tell the artist, you can send me the PDF, but also send me all of the JPEGs and send me extra JPEGs that you've already deleted from your series, because I know that you don't know how to choose your own work. So,
how did you know that?
What? No one knows. None of you guys know how to choose your own work. I don't know how to choose my own work.
Okay.
It's not possible. You have to have an editor. You have to have friends that tell you that picture's whack. I think that's very important. Very important. I will send my work to 10 different friends and get 10 different responses because I know who they are. And if they give me something that I know that they're going to give me, then it's not really useful. But when they give me something that I know that they don't like and they like it or something like that, then I know that I have something. So this is how I work that system.
Even if they don't like it, it's something. If they don't like it, I'll understand why they don't like some things. But if they do like something I thought that they'd never like, then I know that there's something special there. What was I saying? The other part of that, I forgot the question. That's not the answer to the question. That's okay. Well, we have one more. From Fatima, do you think it's harder to do a gallery as a photographer versus a painter? And Fatima, when you say do you mean participate in a gallery or run a gallery? I'm going to assume that it's
I think
running.
it's harder to do a gallery as a photographer versus a painter. I mean, yeah, I don't know what you mean by the question. Run and both? Oh my God. Well, I'd never showed my own work in a gallery because I thought that was faux pas. That's probably stupid. I probably just should have shown my own work at the gallery. But versus a painter, I don't know the painter's life. Painter's life is very complicated and confusing to me. And I'm surprised that people can consider, like, still be painters and make enough money to do that. I know that that is probably a very low percentage of people on earth. As photographers, we probably have way more, we can do a lot more for making money than a painter can. Do I think it's harder to do? Well, I wouldn't run a gallery. I think that it's not hard. It's just, if you have money, it's not hard to run a gallery. That's the end of that statement. I mean, like, if you have enough money, then you can run any gallery you want. But if you don't, then it becomes difficult because you have to talk to people that I don't want to talk to. I mean, I don't want to talk to rich people in that way to get them to buy work. It doesn't, there's just something that makes me so mad about that whole idea. So no galleries for me. But as far as the publishing goes, that's where I sit. I like that part.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so any other questions from anyone?
Diverse sets of work. Do I have a favorite? I don't know. That's a really hard question. It's a good question. Iceland's beautiful. That was really great work to make, but now it feels like I made that stuff 50 years ago. I think that the best work is the work that is in my mind that I will make or hopefully make. I think that that's always kind of the best. Like, what is next?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever's the past is the past. Like, it's out. The book is still part of a past to me, but like the new work is like, I want to get on an airplane. When can I get on a damn airplane?
I have a question, which is, I know that you studied at Purchase, as did I, not at the same time, but you studied with Jed Devine, who is primarily, I guess you would say, a landscape photographer. And
Still life.
Still Life Landscape, and your first series seemed really very committed to landscape, and I just was curious about that, impact maybe that Jed had on you. And
yeah, I think Jed had a big impact, but so did Sergio Fernandez, who's a complete architectural photographer, and he was photographing some of the more boring things in the world, like way more boring than George Tice, like photographing empty office spaces at 1 a.m., like printers and rugs, and I was like, oh my God, fucking boring. But there was something about it that was just so lovely, and I was like, if he can do this, then I can do some boring photographs too. So it's like those two professors. I mean, all the professors at college gave me something different, and I wasn't only making those landscapes when I was photographing. It was just a piece of the process. So there's a guy named Bob Cosma that was showing me how to do non-silver work in the darkroom. So that was a different mentality. There was Marcia Dew, who was teaching me a little bit about the history of photography. That was different. Joanne Walters, who is an amazing portraitist, amazing color worker. So having those different pieces, Deborah Messapelli, who was totally constructed reality. I mean, there was a good group of people at that point in Purchase College. I don't know if that still exists the same way today, but that was pretty excellent. I got lucky.
Great. Okay, so do we have any more questions? How do you spell George's last name? Fatima asks. So if you could put
Who's
that
George?
I'm not sure. Did you? I'm not sure who George is. Fatima, who is George? Do you mean the photographer Kris is referencing?
Yeah, about the photographer.
Not the photographer.
Say that one more time, please.
I was talking about the photographer.
The photographer that influenced you.
At school. Or no, just in, George Tice, my bad. T-I-C-E, Tice. Yeah, George Tice.
What is it about the boring, the banal that you find interesting?
If you can make a good picture of something really boring, I think that it's better than making a picture of something really like beautiful. You can, making pictures at sunset on the beach is always going to be nice. But if you can make a picture of like White Castle at night and make me want to love that, then I think that's a little bit more special.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Well, any questions? Any more questions? Maybe related to that, to the boring.
The banal. I love photography. Good word for that. I haven't heard that word in years.
Okay, so I feel like if we don't have any more questions, we're going to end. Anyone else?
You should have had more questions. I don't know what to tell you guys.
Well, I guess I do have a question, which is that having run a gallery as you did for several years and dealing with collectors, and also your experience working at the Guggenheim, do you feel that there's less of an interest in the art world and market in buying and showing photographs? And
Was
that's
there ever
why
interest?
there's
I mean, like,
sort of more like a,
I feel like it's always been kind of not interesting to people to show photographs. I mean,
there
at
was
some
a
point,
moment in the 90s though where there was a lot of it though.
but we only saw like 10 people's work. I mean, I think that it's just like we've only saw like 50 photographers that we still mention, but there were still thousands of people that were not getting any play. So I think that it's just like this kind of mentality that we've produced for ourselves, thinking that we have less of a shot, but we never had a shot. No one's ever giving us shots. So we have to take it all ourselves, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was, it has changed. There are less big photography galleries now. Of course, there's probably less people selling prints, but people that I'm around are selling prints. So, and they're probably more expensive now than they were then. Like back then, you were probably selling a print for hundreds, and now you can sell it for 10,000. I mean, if you have that. I mean, I don't have that, but some people have that. What is your take on the NFT market? Yeah, I'm doing a lecture on NFT tomorrow night through Blue Sky Gallery. So you should check out the Blue Sky Gallery website and sign up for that lecture. I'm still learning about NFT, which is called non-fungible tokens. It's pretty much like selling your work on Ether. And probably all of you know about this because you're younger than I am. So, I just said a bunch of code words, and I hope that they make sense. But pretty much Ethereum is a blockchain, and I can't explain a blockchain in the next 2 minutes, but it's a whole different type of money making or a different system for currency. Bitcoin is part of a blockchain, and a blockchain is what Bitcoin exists on. So Bitcoin is a currency as part of a blockchain, and I'm using the Ethereum blockchain to try to sell digital images, right? So last week, 2 weeks ago, I got in touch with a dude named Justin Aversana, I saw him newly on one of these NFT websites. You'll see it mostly, like Christie's is doing an auction. If you type Christie's NFT, you'll see some information. But what it is you're selling your digital file. Your digital file exists on this blockchain as a one of one, or whatever your edition wants to be. Like sometimes you can edition it. I've done one of ones to start, just to test the market. Justin had 100 photographs available as part of a Twin Flames project where he photographed twins, 100 pairs of twins. And it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's an amazing work. He photographed all over the world. I mean, there's pictures from London, like South Africa. I mean, they're everywhere. And they're gorgeous portraits. And he put them online, all 100, and sold them at 0.55 ETH, Ethereum or Ether coins. 0.55 at that point was equivalent to like $1,400. Their edition of one digital file. He sold out in a week, 100 prints. He made 55 ETH, which is equivalent to, I think, he made $100,000. Yeah, so he made $100,000 selling digital files online last week. So I was like, I need to be part of that, because there's different buyers, different collectors, a different base of people on that system. And the gallery world's coming. They're going to be in it soon enough because they can see that money and no overhead. Except for, like, of course, it consumes so much energy to make these NFTs happen in the world that something needs to change on that end. But it's not going to change the development of what comes next. I mean, can you imagine being able to go onto an NFT site and finding the best photographer from Pakistan that you never knew existed, because now they have a place for themselves on the internet of things? That's what the future is. The democratization of photography in a way that makes the people money, not Instagram stealing, not Facebook, not TikTok, not anybody who's stealing your content. This gives it back to yourself. You get to sell it. You can sell it for $1. I sold mine for $1,000. I sold 12. So, like, meaning I now have $12,000 worth of Ethereum. I can make that into cash if I want, but Ethereum will be worth way more in the future. So that 10 grand can go up 20 times and be worth 200,000. Easy. I mean, that could happen within 5 years. Maybe it doesn't happen. I don't think you should do this type of thing for money. I think that eventually we're going to put all of our books on here so that people around the world can have 4K JPEGs of a full book on on their TV screen. Everybody has a 55-inch TV screen, and it'll be easier and bigger to show prints on that screen than it would be to have a book. And if I can sell the book for $10 on your screen, then we're talking. That's what I think, that there's something there. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but the cost is minimal. I mean, it costs like nothing to be part of these systems. So why not try?
And once if you sold the copyright, I mean, of that image, once you've sold it, do you keep the copyright, or?
It's not copyright. You're selling a digital file on an Ethereum network. You can have it as JPEGs anywhere else on the web. You can sell it to a museum. It's totally separate from the world. This is a new world for photography. Until someone tries to change the rules and museums say you can't sell your images on NFT or whatever BS people will come up with. Right now, it's completely fresh and you can do what you want. And that's what makes it exciting to me.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, that's a whole other talk. Maybe we should do that. Well, any last questions? Because Kris has to now go into another link and talk to a couple of students.
But isn't the power lesser than running a studio overall? Isn't the problem more with the currency and blockchain and not NFT art? I don't know what the real problem is here. I know that making Bitcoins and Ether coins and all sorts of other blockchains are really stressing on the energy system, but our energy system sucks. It needs to be better anyway. So, like we've seen that through Texas's problems in the last week. So I don't trust that the energy problems are a real concern. I don't believe that. I don't think you should listen to anybody. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to anybody. Definitely don't listen to the news. I mean, God, if you're listening to them, they're going to tell you. Anyway, I can stop talking crap now.
Okay. Okay. Well, if you do have any more questions, you can email any of us and we'll forward the question to Kris. And now we're going to end our talk. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it, Kris. It was really interesting, and just I love listening to you and how independent you just. I think one of the things about you that I most appreciate is that you've really made it happen for yourself. Like you've inserted yourself into a market and an art world that, doesn't always want us. Just to say it simply and bluntly. And I think that is something I really admire about you. So
well, thank you
so much.
I appreciate it. And I think that the art world works in and out. Like sometimes it will want you. Most of the time it won't. But sometimes you get what you need from it. But it's very rare that you get it when you want it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right, y'all.
Okay.
Peace.